Well, welcome. This webinar on fostering STEM identity in youth is the first one that we've put on. My name is Jerry Abel. I'm co-director for the Portland Metro STEM Partnership, and with me is the other co-director, Kristen Harrison. Kristen is going to be monitoring the chat, so please do continue to contribute your ideas and questions. At the end of the webinar, we'll unmute everyone and just have a conversation. So do know that you won't be muted the entire time, and you can unmute yourself as well. So today what we're going to do is provide an overview of what STEM identity is, how we define it, but more importantly, we're going to hear from 3 of our educators about how they foster STEM identity in youth that they work with. And then we're going to break into smaller virtual groups so that you can have a discussion with 4 or 5 other educators around the ideas that you've heard. And then bring back that discussion and those ideas to the larger group. So we encourage you to take some notes to make that smaller conversation as rich as possible. And again, at the end of the webinar, there'll be an opportunity for a group discussion and kind of Q&A. First, what I'd like to do, though, is to introduce our presenters. So we have Sharon Engel, Kylene Parks, and Jennifer Basham. I'm going to let them provide a little bit of an introduction for themselves, but we're very grateful that they're willing to share their good work and what they're doing. So Sharon, would you like to go first?
Sorry, could get myself unmuted. Hi, I'm Sharon Engel, Quatama Elementary. I've been there since it opened in 2008. And currently I am a 3rd grade teacher, science and math in the morning. And then I am a STEAM TOSA for 2 schools, Quatama now and also Tobias Elementary, as well as the after school club theater coach. So I work with after school club coaches on their STEM activities that they're doing as well.
Thank you. And we have Kylene.
Hi, I'm Kylene Parks. I was the STEAM TOSA at Boise Elliott Humboldt School in Portland Public for 4 years, and prior to that, a 4th grade teacher at that school. And currently, I moved to a new role as a school improvement TOSA here in Portland Public for Title I schools.
Thank you. And then Jennifer.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Basham, and I work for the Multnomah Education Service District Outdoor School. And my role here is a site supervisor on special assignment, similar to a TOSA. And I am helping to coordinate our evaluation programs that we are doing with students to understand how the outdoor school program support students' learning in an outdoor environment, and also helping kind of coordinate some trainings and learning related to next generation science standards and how we implement that at the outdoor school program.
Great, thank you very much. So again, as questions arise, thoughts, ideas, do please share them via the chat. But let's first take a look at what we mean by STEM identity. So, of course, the first thing you want to do is Google the phrase STEM identity and see what pops up. And this happens to be one of the images that shows up. Now, as a former physics teacher, I won't even begin to interpret what this means, other to say that it does speak of this idea of a cell starting out in some form or fashion, but it can, based on all sorts of factors, end up fulfilling some kind of specific role or function. And that's kind of an interesting analogy to what STEM identity is, because in part, identity, our own identity, is really that association of who we are with a group of others. Who do we want to associate with? Where am I comfortable? Where are there shared interests and values? For instance, do I consider myself a craftsperson, a musician, a scientist, or an educator? Well, the interesting thing is that the experiences we have over the course of our lives can really define our own identities. And that means that those opportunities and experiences can be designed with intentionality and with purpose, and therefore we can create these pathways that foster or support STEM identity. And so that's why this image was like, oh, well, that's kind of clever from a former physics teacher's perspective. And I'm happy to talk to other biology teachers to learn more about this stem cell lineage and identity. But for now, what I'd like to do is share my own story of why I feel like I have a STEM identity. So for me, one of the things that I realized as I started pondering my own identity was every week my father would take my brother and myself to the bookstore. Now in rural North Carolina, going to the big town to the bookstore was a big thing. And every week we got $5 and we could buy anything in that bookstore. Back then, they only sold books and magazines, no toys. So I tended towards science fiction books. My brother tended towards automotive magazines. Ask me at the end of the webinar what his identity is about. But those science fiction books really provided me with exposure to science, exposure to new ideas, new ways of thinking. Now, what does lawnmowers have to do with it? Well, every summer, my brother and I would visit our grandparents, and again, rural Appalachian, Virginia. Not a lot to do in rural Appalachian, Virginia. And so I would sit next to my grandfather, who, as a side business, repaired lawnmowers. Well, he was pretty good about sitting me down and saying, you fix that one while I fix this one. And I had no clue what I was doing, but he didn't allow me to give up. And quite truthfully, there was nothing else to do. But that opportunity to work with my hands, to problem solve in real time for a real purpose, and to do it over time to build competency, I really saw that as a key element of one of the experiences that helped shape my own personal STEM identity. But it's also more than that. It's things like curiosity. When I asked teachers why, they would often reply, well, I don't know. What do you think? Now, in hindsight, I realized that they more than likely actually knew the answer to those questions, but chose not to answer them, chose to encourage me to explore, to investigate, to come up with my own answers. And so those environments that fostered curiosity were critical. The idea of peer groups were also important. And those peer groups can look for anything from classroom groupings of kids that are flexible and change over time to after-school clubs, but an opportunity to work together with peers who have similar interests was an important part of the experience. Now, challenges also play a key role. They have to be challenging but achievable. They have to promote struggle, but they also have to be kind of well thought out, supported. I toss in the music recital because I think too early in my development as a musician, I was suddenly invited, asked, encouraged, required, coerced, I don't know, you can choose the word, to do a music recital in front of way too many adults way before I was ready. My response to that was simply to drop out of the program. And that pretty much ended my path towards becoming a musician. Would I ever become a musician? I don't know. But having kind of that inappropriate challenge placed in front of me was definitely a factor. I still love music, still play around with various instruments, but I do not consider myself a musician. So challenging but achievable problems, definitely part of the mix for me. What really led me to the path of becoming a practicing scientist was that idea of being able to solve real problems. Problems that made a difference, problems that were relevant, problems that were beyond just opportunities to learn for the sake of learning or for the sake of doing. So that was something that really propelled me towards a science career. And then what became, why did I become a STEM educator? Well, from an early age, people would tell me, oh, you'd make a great teacher, you'd make a great teacher. And I would think, you want me to stand in front of 20 first graders? Terrifying. You want me to stand in front of middle schoolers? No way. High schoolers? You've got to be kidding. So I never viewed myself as an educator until I started seeing role models, people who were like me, who stepped into that role, mentors who coached me, allowed me to kind of take that step. So for me, those were kind of my pathway, my experiences that really helped form my STEM identity. What I'd love is, again, for you to kind of contribute in the chat opportunities, experiences that you felt were critical in your own formation of the identity that you prescribe to. This is just one example of kind of the variety of experiences that was formative for me. Now, I also hear somebody asking, because I know you're out there somewhere, well, that's great, but what does the research say? I'm so glad you asked. So, what does the research say? Well, for us, we really define STEM identity around these four aspects: academic identity, motivational resilience, flexible mindset, and this thing called STEM affinity. Flexible mindset is becoming more and more popular. It's that belief that students have that if they work harder, they can learn more, that their intellect is not fixed and frozen in time, that they're not as smart as they're going to be and they can't be any smarter. That's the idea behind that, flexible. I can do better, I can learn, I can improve. STEM affinity is that idea of one's closeness to STEM, and it could be a social connection, it could be individual interests. It's kind of when they think about science or engineering, technology, math, what kind of emotions are brought up? Are they positive? Are they negative? Are they fearful? Are they excited? So that idea of affinity towards STEM is an important part of looking at this idea of STEM identity. Now, the next two attributes, academic identity, are broken down even further. So for academic identity, we're looking at things like learner identity. So how do they see themselves as being able to succeed in learning environments that emphasize STEM? The belonging and relatedness. Do they feel like they belong in that environment, that they can relate to others within that environment? Do they feel safe? The idea of competency. Do they believe they are capable of learning in those opportunities, that they can actually pursue a career that involves science, technology, engineering, or math? Is there autonomy and ownership? Are they given choice and influence over what and how they learn? And then the last one, purpose and relevance. Again, do they believe that the coursework, the professional work within STEM is meaningful, important, and worthwhile? So those are the elements that kind of make up that idea of the broader academic identity. When we look at motivational resilience, we're looking at two aspects. So if you think broadly, motivational resilience is like that active participation and persistence in challenging situations. So active engagement, we're talking about the kids being cognitively engaged, intellectually engaged. They're finding the content interesting. They're curious. They want to know more. They want to learn more. Constructive coping, that's their response to challenging situations. Do they persist? What kind of problem-solving strategies do they use? How do they cope? How do they respond to setbacks? So all of these elements, academic identity, motivational resilience, flexible mindset, STEM affinity, those are kind of the elements that help foster that STEM identity. Those are the things that research says are important to consider. What excites me about this is that, number one, we can actually measure these elements, these attributes. And even more exciting is educators can influence them. There are strategies out there that can impact every single one of these elements, every single one of these attributes. And so for me, that's exciting. We know how we can foster it. We know that we can measure it. And we know there are strategies out there that we can use to support it. Again, toss your ideas into the chat. toss your questions into the chat. Now, this is what I've shared is my story and kind of the research behind it, but I really want you to hear from our real experts. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kotama and Sharon, and I'm going to let her describe all of the good work that they're doing with their kids and how they're fostering their STEM identity. And Sharon, just let me know when you want me to advance the slides.
Okay, thank you, Jerry Ann. So I'm going to go ahead and just get started a little bit the background with Kotama. We've been open since 2008, and when we started, we had one of the largest low-income housing developments in all of Hillsborough in our boundaries. And we also have continually had a 20% mobility rate of our students every year, and a very high number of languages, anywhere between 25 and 32 in a given year. So there's been a lot of variables that are constantly changing. And when the principal started Kotama, her goal was she wanted to make sure that all students coming to Kotama, every socioeconomic level language, were getting the same kinds of high quality, rigorous academics experiences as students who might go to a more affluent school in the area. So our heart has always been for those kind of those kids that are, have a little bit more stacked up against them. And so we've always looked at them as, we really cherish them and want to get them to succeed. And so that kind of started, and it started with a partnership with Right Brain, which I will address later. But due to that partnership, it kind of fostered a lot of different aspects and programs that we implemented that really helped with that. The first thing that we did develop at our school was a community garden. We're fortunate enough to be right next door to Sunrise Church, and there's a stretch of land from Hillsborough Parks that is open for community garden, and so they've allowed us, as long as we follow all the rules, to have a plot there for free. So since 2008, we've had a continuing growing plot, which has kind of come and changed over time. And so the pictures you see are just some of our different grade level students out experiencing that. When we had the privilege of joining the Portland Metro STEM Partnership back in 2011 or 12, we were able then to kind of take what our ideas were and really focus them in to more of a STEM lens instead of just an art lens. So we kind of became the STEAM school in our district because of that art piece. And we were looking at the goals that Jerry Ann referred to previously, and some of those common goals or outcomes that we really talked with as a staff was to really make sure that students could communicate their ideas, find solutions, be able to argue orally or on paper about what they were finding, have that conversation. We also wanted them to be able to really look at a problem, no matter how complex, and figure out, how do I take this problem apart and be able to work through it and get to the other side, and that including that perseverance piece. So we wanted kids to be really highly participating in the activities and be really critical thinkers. And so by developing those common goals, we've stuck with them throughout the whole time since then, and we review them every year, and we measure how our kids are doing based upon those common goals to see if what we're doing has been successful. So Jerry Ann, if you want to go ahead. So to help in meeting some of those outcomes, we've developed some really deep partnerships with two organizations. One was the Right Brain, and then the other one in 2012 was the Oregon Zoo. And that has been, both of those actually together have been very instrumental in where Kotama is today. The really great thing about the zoo is they have an education liaison who has a lot of background knowledge and a lot of the science knowledge, especially in the life sciences, who's been able to come in and be able to give teachers some of that knowledge that we need to really communicate with our students, especially with the new science standards that have been coming out, the NGSS, what we can do around that with our kiddos. And so that partnership, Allison Heimowitz has come in. She's had professional development for our staff. We created a storyline around salmon and the NGSS life sciences. In third grade, we teach about the salmon life cycle. And so that was kind of the anchor grade for our entire school. And we spent 2 days as a staff really understanding what were NGSS, what were cross-cutting concepts, what did that mean as far as changing our practices for our students, and how is that going to look from that point on. And then we kind of looked at, okay, I used to teach this, but now I'm changing, and we just streamlined it across K through 6 so that we everybody kind of knew what their role was and how to support that learning, so that from K to 6 there's a common thread throughout the whole school. And I think that's been our strongest piece that we've created. Students now see Allison and call her the Salmon Lady. Kids who were in her class come back and want to talk to her about what she's doing. She's made a connection in our school. She gets us involved with Hillsborough Parks and Rec. We go out and do habitat restoration around the salmon. We plant trees and all of those things, and it's just spreading. Every year it spreads more and more, and she works more and more with more grade levels. And through that, students really see, I'm a student who can make a difference. I'm a child now, but I can get the knowledge and see myself being able to make a difference in the environment, in the world right now, that can change it for the future. So that's been a very powerful experience through our whole school. And the Right Brain Institute has been amazing. And what's been really exciting is that since the very beginning, we have tried to correlate whatever art project we're doing around some standard, especially science standards. So kids are learning how to move, to do Tableau, to show their science understanding in a different way, or they're creating projects that share a science idea in a new way, and that deepens their understanding. And it also provides a problem that's a slightly different than, I'm going to take what I've learned now and have to put it into a new situation. So we're increasing that depth of knowledge for our students. So that's another partnership that's very embedded and has been really strong in our school that's made a huge difference. Go ahead, Jerry Ann. And so because of all these shared experiences, students have something to talk about. Kids can go home in 2nd grade and 4th grade and their parents say they have commonalities in the conversations that they're having. They're seeing that, my child, they remember when now their little brother's in that class, and there's a conversation happening because the experiences are shared throughout the entire school day and throughout the year, and they come again and again. So that's really helped, I think, to also just increase that interconnectedness and the community of our school. Our whole goal is to engage students completely, mind and body. So we like them to be up and moving, out on field trips, out in the playground, looking for things for science, over in the garden spaces. We have Orchard Park close to us, over walking to Orchard Park, going downtown to downtown Hillsborough, really understanding the community around them, and all relating it is to, what does this look like now for you? What could it look like for you in the future? What role do you see yourself in this? Are you a scientist? Are you an engineer? What is this? So we're constantly trying to relate real world jobs and real world experiences in with what they're doing as well. And sorry, my voice is starting to go. I've been sick for the last few days. So I'm going to go ahead to the next slide. And then this is our, through fall of 2015, this is the evidence of what we've been working on is showing in the surveys that we're taking, that you can see that both in math and science, students, their academic identity, their understanding of, I see myself as a mathematician, I see myself as a scientist, has been increasingly moving upward over the last few years, as well as their motivational resilience. I'm going to persevere. I'm going to solve this problem. I can do it through the end. It's my responsibility, not my teacher's responsibility, for me to understand this. I'm going to take that on. And so that's also been included. So we have seen exponential, phenomenal growth in our students over the time and we're just very excited about what's been happening at Quotama. So, and I'm done with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. We appreciate your story. So now we're going to hear from Kylene and the good work of Boise Elliott Humboldt.
Hi. So it's nice to follow Sharon and listen to the stories again, because we're really fortunate, Boise Elliott Humboldt, to participate in the Portland Metro STEM Partnership alongside Quotama and really learn from each school. So we were able to share and grow. And I think our programs are similar in some ways, but we've also tackled some things a little bit differently. So you'll hear some things that are the same, and then hopefully I'll add on some other pieces. So Boise Elliott Humboldt is a Portland Public Title I school in North Portland, and we are a unique school in that 100% of our students are free and reduced lunch students, and it also has the largest population in the state of Oregon of Black students. Boise Elliott Humboldt is a historic school in that many of our students have had their parents and even grandparents attend there. It is a neighborhood school, but it doesn't necessarily capture just neighborhood families. Because of that historical lens, we have families that travel from all over Portland to come to our school. And so we really feel lucky in that we get to have a unique set of students that are grounded in the history of their community. And we've been a part of this process now. This is the 5th year that they're undergoing this transformation, and it really was a big transformation. Thinking back to year 1, when we found out that we had the opportunity to participate in the Portland Metro Partnership, we looked at what was the work that had already been going on at Boise Elliott, what was successful for our students, and where did we see that we could add in STEM to really make that even better. And that work came out of a partnership with the Oregon Writing Project, where teachers had found that while, provided scripted curriculum was something that we could use with our students, it was really the units that teachers wrote themselves. And when they made students feel personally connected to those units, that students saw the greatest success. And that was around place, race, and justice work. And so we found that through that place piece, that was a great lens for STEM to fit in, because we could really show our students how the natural world connected to their immediate environment, to their neighborhood, to the possible careers that they could have, to the people that were living and working right around them. So that was where the focus for STEAM, and we'll talk about the STEM to STEAM transformation, but that's where the heart of that work came for us. And we knew that with a limited time in our schedule, and really knowing what, again, had worked with our students, that integrated units of study were what was really important, so that students could see how their work in reading and writing was also connected to what they were doing in science and even in music and technology, so that all parts of their day were connected and relevant, and they understood what and why they were learning certain things. So that was a big focus for us. Next slide. So in thinking about how we were going to tackle this new task, we started by looking at what was important for our students to focus on, and those student outcomes that Sharon mentioned. And so we knew that our students face a lot of challenges, both academically and personally, and so we wanted them to have that understanding of persistence and how to work through something that was very challenging and difficult and stick with it, but while also having that high quality participation. So we wanted them to be excited and tackle it, but also produce something that was of the highest quality that they could. And we wanted our students to understand how to solve difficult problems from a variety of angles, how to come at something with limited tools. Those were all things that were really important to us. And most importantly is that one there with the arrow, that we wanted our students to feel a sense of belonging and purpose in why they were working on STEM. We wanted them to be able to see themselves as not just a scientist right now in 4th grade, but also as someone who could then become a scientist in their adulthood, who could find a career that was focused on STEM, who could even just apply these things in their own life at home. So we wanted them to really see themselves in the world, because we knew that our students were not finding these images of people necessarily out in their real world. So we wanted to highlight that for them. And it was a challenging way to start off because some of our teachers themselves were not necessarily comfortable or didn't have the experience in science or in technology to bring that immediately with their students. So our first years really started out, I became the traveling science lady. In some cases, I rolled around the school with a cart and modeled for teachers what a hands-on science lesson could look like, or how students could tackle solving a problem by just putting a bunch of cardboard and tape on their table. And so it took modeling that for our teachers in some cases to see that our students were really excited by this new kind of learning, and the enthusiasm of the students is what caught on for the teachers in understanding, you know what, this is something we do want to learn more about, and recognizing where our strengths and weaknesses were and where we could build on that. We also had a similar partnership that had just come on at the time with Right Brain, and that was a wonderful way for us to add in that arts piece because our students love learning through movement. They were really able to see the connection by making a piece of art that connected what they had learned rather than always writing about it. So it was a wonderful way to just tie in an extra resource for teachers to really give them some more professional development to understand how to truly create an integrated day for our students. Yeah, so next slide, please. So one of the things that we also did immediately when I started modeling lessons was calling our students scientists or engineers or artists or musicians. We found that by just that immediate identity of letting, you know, you're not just a student anymore. In this moment, you're being a problem solver, you're being a scientist. And so that clearly calling it out for our students told them the message that they are this thing, that it is possible for them to be that. And that's really carried through. I'm no longer at that school on a day-to-day basis, but when I do go back and visit, I still hear teachers saying that, and I hear students saying it to each other, which lets me know that that really is getting into our students, that they are this, they are capable. And that was really important to us for that motivation piece, that they're able to tackle through this because that is a part of their identity. And we knew that our students, based on our previous work, that learning in the classroom was not always going to be enough, because our students, if they read something about a pond or about the ocean and they had never visited that place, they didn't have anything to actually connect that experience with. So it was really difficult for them to understand the importance of learning this new concept if they had never seen it or practiced it. So we knew that community partners were going to be essential to that work. But we also knew that we didn't want our students to just have a smattering of a bunch of different experiences. We wanted it to be deep and with people and adults that would continually come back into the building to form a stronger relationship with them. So a couple of our partners included the Fish and Wildlife Service, which still works with the school around salmon, similar to Quotama, and also the City of Portland Clean Rivers, were two of our partners who we said we would love to work with you, but we also want it to be beyond just one grade level. So they were able to create programming alongside our teachers that connects kids even starting in kindergarten all the way through their middle school experience, to take them out into the field to see the actual practice of this work. And we found that by getting our students out into a field experience before their learning started, then the teacher had a point of reference that all students had experienced that was able to ground the entire unit throughout the work. And that was really exciting to see. And in the first years, especially the first year when we had parents chaperone, students came unprepared with their clothing. They had no idea what to expect. We had some parents not want to chaperone these trips when we said, well, we're gonna go pull, ivy. Well, I don't want to do that. That sounds, not fun. And now we actually have to turn away parents. And students have all the right gear and all the right things because they're so excited to get out in the field and see their learning in place. And they actually, I've had students come to me and say, this weekend we went to, the park, we went out to see the work that we had learned in class, and they're taking their families now. And so it's really starting to, again, connect students that this is their learning, this is who they are, And it's because we're right here in our own community, they're able to see that connection. We also were able to ask our partners, because we had that deep relationship with them, to always, if possible, find people who looked like our students to come out alongside them, so that we not only are exposing them to people in this field, but people who look like them in this field. And similar to Sharon, our students will see, you know, Sean, the salmon guy, walk in, and they get so excited because they can tell him, well, this year, now we're learning this, even though they haven't worked with him for a couple of years. And so he's building that relationship with the students, which is exciting to see. And we also learned, one of the big lessons, I think, for our school was that sometimes we turned down a partnership if it wasn't exactly the right fit for our students. And that was something that in the beginning seemed awkward to do, especially when we know that resources are slim. But we knew that it really needed to fit with our focus, and it needed to be something that was sustainable so that our teachers could plan off of this and create a deeper experience. And so we have said no to partners. And I think that they understand that, in knowing, you know what, we don't want just the one-time experience. We want to work with you to build something that's really going to match our students and our focus and be something we can continue in the future. Right, and the last slide. Excuse me, I've also been sick, I'm sorry.
No.
And now that we are in our, I guess it's the 5th year continuing now, teachers are really working to build that sustainability piece and to continue to fuse STEAM into all aspects of the day and add on some of the components that we weren't able to do in the beginning. In the first years, we didn't necessarily focus as much on engineering, and that's something that we tried to bring on in the last couple of years. For example, there's a monthly engineering challenge. We knew that students were going home excited about what they'd done at school, and we wanted to make something that was an easy connection for parents to learn and participate in the process. So the monthly engineering challenge is something that teachers work on in the classroom that is using recycled materials, very easy things to find. And then they also host a family night where parents can come in and work with their child to build the similar challenge or work to solve that problem. And then there's an assembly. They brought in a bucket truck to do an egg drop. We had wind-powered vehicles, all different things to just get kids excited all the way from kindergarten through the 8th grade. And projects are starting to repeat now. And at first we were not sure if that. And so we realized that actually repeating was working out really well because so much new learning had happened for kids and they were able to apply something different and use that process. So that solidified for us the understanding of the actual engineering process and not just visiting something one time. We also wanted to make sure that students throughout their day didn't just see STEAM as a class, or you only do it during science time, or you only, go out in the field for this one area. So there is a STEAM lab in the school where any teacher can take their students in there to have a messy, complicated project, and the tools and materials are there for them. They can leave things out. But then spaces like our library have started to transition so that when students go to the library, it's no longer a traditional just check out books and have a story read to you, but our librarian is teaching them how to research different things that they're learning about in class. There are open spaces, there's sewing machines now in the library, there's a Lego wall, there were old computers that students were learning how to use tools to take apart. So every piece of the day is really an extension of STEAM for students. They can see it applied in all of their areas. And that's becoming even more sustainable because families are invested in it. And so now they're bringing in materials. They are choosing to do a fundraiser to support something new to add to the makerspace because we all see value in what this is doing for our students. So that's kind of where they're at now. It's definitely continues to be a transformation still. And I think each year it just gets better and different. But we know that our students are starting to feel that identity even more for themselves because it lives in every aspect of their day. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you, Kylene. Now we'll turn it over to Jennifer and hear about the outdoor school.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, I wanted to speak with you about the outdoor school program, and I imagine that there are some folks in the group that have heard about outdoor school and what we do for students, but I wanted to take a moment to kind of give a brief overview of some of the things that outdoor school is and what we do. So a little bit different than the in-school programs. Our program is a program that's an overnight science program for 6th graders all throughout the Portland metro area. There are a couple different programs. I work for the Multnomah Education Service District Outdoor School, and so that we typically serve students in Portland and East County schools through to Corbett, David Douglas, Reynolds, Portland Public. And we have students attend our program for anywhere between 3 to 6 days in duration, and they spend the night out at a couple different camps around the region. And it's an opportunity for students to engage with science with their classroom teacher and their entire class of students. And we try to make each of the weeks of outdoor school very diverse in the students that attend. So we have students that come from Northwest Portland, attending students that live in Southeast or outer Southeast Portland. And it creates a really interesting mix of students that are all coming together for this shared experience at outdoor school. They attend with their classroom teacher, and we think that that's really valuable because when students are learning at outdoor school, the teachers that bring them are also able to connect the lessons and activities we do there back to the classroom, and our hope is that they extend that into their daily programs and curriculum in the traditional classroom. All of our lessons are focused on field-based learning. We teach water, animals, plants, and soil. And we try to engage students in a way that they may not be able to in a traditional classroom by being able to be outside in the class in a field environment. And what I heard from the previous two presenters was that was something that they found success with as well in being able to take students outside for that authentic experience. Another piece of our program that we think is really important is the high school leadership component, in that we have high school leaders from all over the region coming to our program, and we mentor them to be teachers and educators, and we mentor them to work with 6th grade students. And I think it's a really powerful way for the high school leaders to gain leadership skills, but also for the 6th grade students to connect with someone that's really close in age, that they can relate to their teachers in a meaningful way. So if you can go to the next slide. So outdoor school is a unique learning environment for the students that come, and I think that while outdoor school is a school and we consider the program that we provide for students to be very rigorous and important in their understanding of science learning. Oftentimes students come to the program thinking that it's just going to be a camp experience where they'll get to play games and be at camp, but what they don't realize is that they are playing games and they are having fun at outdoor school, but they're also learning. And it's a powerful experience, I think, for the students that come, because they don't necessarily make that connection that they are learning science. And while students come to the program, we are really conscious and we invite students to engage with their learning in a meaningful way so that they can take what they've learned back to their traditional classrooms and become inspired by what they learned about at outdoor school, being inspired about learning about trees and seeing how they grow. And then when they're walking down the street or in their city park, they're able to see that connection to the tree that's growing and learning or growing at outdoor school in the forest is very similar to the plants and trees that are growing in the city park that they're right next to. And I think that that's a really powerful opportunity for the students to connect the outdoor school program to their daily lives. And next slide. So one thing that we have been very excited about is working with the Portland Metro STEM Partnership, because we have been able to, in working with the Portland Metro STEM Partnership, we have worked to gather data to understand how we are supporting students in their growth in science identity. And we have partnered with the Portland Metro STEM Partnership to collect this data using a tool that has been developed and created and made specific for our program and the other programs like us, so that we can understand how we support students learning. And in this chart, you'll notice that we have noticed some pretty amazing results in terms of developing students' academic identity. In both of our sessions, fall and spring, students are asked to take a survey where we're looking at how they view themselves as scientists, both before and after their experience. And it's been so powerful to see how their academic identity has shifted in just a matter of days, because students come to our program anywhere between 3 to 5 days, and it's really powerful to see that growth. And in thinking about this and wondering, seeing this data, it makes me wonder, why is that? Why are students able to grow in their own identity in a program like outdoor school? And so, next slide. We think that there are a few practices that have been ingrained within our program over the years that we've been in existence. And I think that there are true values about what the outdoor school program is and does for students. One value and practice that we really strongly believe in is students' ability to learn in a way that takes the learning away from hands-on, or learning away from reading about it in textbooks, but puts it in their hands. And students at Outdoor School are learning in small groups, and we really try to make the relevancy of our programs explicit and frame it in a way that supports their growth and fosters their identity. And I wanted to just take a moment to kind of do an overview of what each of these practices are, and then we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about how and why we think that this helps support students' academic and STEM identity. And so, next slide. Some of the practices that we do is we focus all of our lessons on hands-on learning. To learn about watersheds, students are encouraged to build a watershed and learn about how the water shapes the land and how humans can impact that watershed. When students are learning about plants, they are able to dissect a flower right there. They're able to see a cross-section of a tree, and they're given that flower to dissect so that they can learn about all the different parts. When learning about soil, they are actually taking pieces of the soil and collecting it and making observations and writing down their hypotheses about why the soil is why it has the composition it does and how that might impact the plants and animals that live in the soil. And when learning about animals, they are encouraged to and have specimens of animals that they can observe and inquire and learn deeply that, you know, how the function of the teeth work and how they're all able to help that animal survive in its environment. And each of these practices are there so that we can support students in deeply understanding that they have the ability to and the knowledge to observe and inquire and discover their learning so that they can understand science in a truly meaningful way. And having hands-on exploration for students really shifts that focus from text-driven lessons to more exploration of science. And we find that students who maybe aren't the best, who aren't strong readers, or students that may need that active social learning can really thrive through hands-on learning. And they're able to connect the material and really build their own knowledge and extend their knowledge about science. The next practice is small learning groups. While at Outdoor School, we are working with students in groups of 5 to 7 with one leader, which is typically a high school leader that we train on teaching techniques and the content of that we're teaching on plants, water, animals, and soil. And they are able to really, the high school leaders are able to extend their own knowledge of science concepts because oftentimes I know that for me, if I'm able to teach something, I understand it so much more deeply. And so our high school students are able to learn about science while also teaching about it and going through the process of inquiry with students at outdoor school. And these small groups, I think, are also valuable because they help support and encourage participation from all students, because it lessens the pressure to know the answer to a question. And students are able to ask for clarification, which makes the learning that they have a little bit more individualized just for that small group of students. And it also, I think, really supports students in their ability to engage and participate. In a group of 5 to 7, it can be really easy to participate, whereas in a larger group, it may be a little bit more challenging for students. The next practice that we have at Outdoor School is that we support students in making the relevancy of the content really explicit for them. When they're coming to water field study, we ask a central question that really frames the entire day of activities for them. One question that we might have is the Salmon River healthy? And students are encouraged to investigate and figure out whether or not it is. Having this central question really connects their learning to their personal lives, because they are seeing right in front of them this river, and they may look at it and say, I have no idea if this river is healthy. And so through that process, they're able to begin to develop a curiosity about the world around them and how that might impact their own lives. So I think having this central question can really provide an entry point for students who might otherwise just see a river and not think twice about the science behind it and the science that is completely intertwined with that river. And through this central question, I think it also can help support the idea of a teacher as a facilitator of learning, because the teacher isn't necessarily the all-knower of the information. Instead, the question puts the learning into the student's hands, and from that, the facilitator teacher can help guide them and help them understand or make extended questions about how would they find out if the river is healthy. What's their evidence for making a claim, so that they can begin to develop that wonder and curiosity about the world around them. And so the next slide. And similar to what Kylene was mentioning in terms of framing their experience, we think that this is one key component to some of our success with building students' identity, is that whenever they're at Outdoor School, we frame the activities and encourage the messaging to be specific to the type of learning that they're doing. So when students are on a water field study, they become hydrologists. When they're on plants field study, they become biologists, or animals field study, they're ecologists. And they're beginning to see themselves when we're intentional about connecting that the act of science to the career of science, they begin to see themselves as scientists. And I have a personal experience about this. You know, in my own life, a few years ago, I started to run occasionally, and I entered a few races and enjoyed them, and then I ran some more and enjoyed it. And then I was talking with a friend of mine about different exercise that we do, and I said, you know, that I run occasionally, and she said, oh, so you're a runner. And my knee-jerk reaction was, no, I'm not a runner. That's not who I am. And in my brain, I had kind of reserved the act of running or being a runner with the elite or marathoners. And it wasn't until someone really said that I could be one, or that the things that I was doing made me a runner, did I truly understand that I own that title and that I am someone who's capable of being a runner. And I think that this transfers really seamlessly with education, in that part of our role or our task at Outdoor School is to support students in understanding that they too can own the title of a scientist and own the title of being a hydrologist. And we think that helps inspire students to engage with science, not only at Outdoor School, but also when they go back to their traditional classrooms, and be able to view themselves through the lens of a STEM identity.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Sharon and Kylene, for all those wonderful ideas and the sharing of the strategies that you currently use. So we're going to actually divide you guys into smaller groups virtually so that you can have a conversation with 4 or 5 other folks. So it's going to take me a minute to do that, but suddenly you're going to find yourself in a smaller group. If you do have a video camera, we encourage you to turn that video camera on, and I'll be sure to make sure you're all unmuted, although you do have that ability to unmute yourself. So give me a moment. We suggest these questions, but really, you know, think about questions. Whatever conversation you want to have is great. So whether you use those questions or others, that's fine. All right, so here we go. Okay.
when they're sort of like all together like that, there's a lot of energy happening. So giving them that sort of like redirecting them to a hands-on activity that they can do like as a group, and it's very like engaging, I think is super important. And then also making it place-based. I think someone from the Humboldt School talked about that, which I think is really huge. And that's, again, part of what you talked about making it like explicitly relevant to them.
Yeah, something that I thought was really powerful that I enjoyed listening to from the other two schools was the partnership piece. That we can't create a science identity in a bubble and in a silo. It has to come from the partnerships that we can develop with each other really can strengthen a student to understand that science doesn't just happen in a classroom. It happens at the zoo. It happens in our daily lives. It happens in the microwave. It happens all around us. And having the partnerships to help foster and develop that understanding outside of a classroom or outside of a particular experience can be really powerful. And also to see the connections between all of these areas is really, I think, can be super powerful for students.
One of the things we have had the opportunity in the last 5 years to do is build a bioswale in our front entranceway with Clean Water Services. And I mean, talk about when we first built it, we had the kids doing the planning, researching the plants, calculating the drainage area. So it was outside, it was a partnership. They brought in AmeriCorps volunteers from their organization and their educational person. And now we do updates. So they maintain it. We still calculate the drainage area every year with our 6th graders. So they do the math component, like prove that it was the right size for our parking lot. We weed it. So we identify native and non-natives. And we are starting now with Clean Water Services. I'm starting to develop an interactive bulletin board for the school. So the kids are going to be posting like the wildlife sightings, like if they see pollinators or small mammals, or when the plants start blooming in the spring, if we see any amphibian egg sacs. So just a place to remind the kids that it's there, and it's not just like a feature of our landscape. It's providing things, it's providing habitat, and it's, right, it's like in our front yard, literally.
Yeah.
So I've been excited to work with Clean Water Services and kind of continue the bioswale stuff, because I think it has a lot of aspects of what I think lead to the STEM affinity of these, like it's an asset that we have that we're trying to use at every grade level in at least 1 or 2 classes at every grade level. And so far, I think we've developed some good stuff around it, although certainly not as much as I'd like. That's one of our resources that we leverage.
Go on to the second question. Good job.
And then, I guess for our partnerships and, our resources, we have the part of the AmeriCorps program is recruiting volunteers and community outreach. So I think developing those sort of like project-based plans, like you were saying, like building a bioswale or like a trip that we've identified we want to take. I think that could be really powerful for moving ahead and like bringing the volunteers we have to make more connections with the kids, but then also bringing in more volunteers.
Yeah. I think that for the outdoor school program, the thing that I think or a resource that I would like to leverage a little bit more than we have been is our partnerships with the school districts, because I think that many teachers bring their students to outdoor school and enjoy the experience and enjoy seeing their students in a different light and seeing them engage in a hands-on manner. And it would be really cool to have a way to develop some sort of connection like explicit connection back to the classroom, because I think that it's there, and I think that we have the opportunity to, you know, see the students outside of outdoor school, but potentially in the classroom, or just working with teachers to develop, you know, some sort of curriculum tie back to the classroom so that it becomes a seamless experience for the students, both before, during, and after outdoor school. Because I think that, you know, it's not just one thing that can help students identify themselves as a scientist or have an affinity towards science, but that it's multiple opportunities and multiple contact points for them to develop that.
I wonder, Jennifer, when I was listening to you about the STEM affinity test or survey for your high school volunteers, and if you've ever thought about giving it to them, this is totally off topic, but I would hazard to guess that the high school students are getting more out of it in terms of STEM affinity than the sixth graders, having kind of seen the program and a classroom teacher with the sixth graders.
Yeah, totally. I don't think that we've considered doing that with the high school leaders, but that is a really interesting idea, because you know, you're right. For me, when I was a high school leader, I began to understand more about my environmental science class, and I connected better with my teacher because of that. Because I was like, oh, I have this whole new experience that I can draw from now that I didn't have before I went to outdoor school. And I think that would be a really powerful and easy thing to potentially do with our high school leaders, so that we do understand a little bit more about how they connect and what their affinity towards science is. Good idea.
That's your job, Darian.
Yeah.
I'm on it.
Yeah, that's just, I mean, I think when I worked at outdoor school, I thought, I mean, the sixth graders love it. There's no question, and it's life-changing. But for those high school students, it's the one time I think some of them feel like they have any ownership over science at all. And they feel like masters by the end of the week. And I think that can't help but be positive for a STEM affinity. I know, like my undergraduate degree is in anthropology, and there are plenty of science classes in that, but it wasn't until I worked at outdoor school as a program leader and then field instructor that I was like, oh, science, awesome. And then became a science teacher. So my STEM affinity I got from being instructor at outdoor school. And I think probably the high school students have that kind of same warmth towards science because of their exposure to it through such a good program to begin with. Anyway, just a thought.
Cool.
Okay. How long do we have for this, Jared?
Well, it's going to vary by group. You can leave the breakout when you're ready. I was thinking another 5 minutes or so. So if you want to think about questions that you want to pose to the group, or things that you want to share, or continue your conversation, I'm going to pop into one of the other groups and see how they're doing. But when you feel like you're done with the conversation, if you look to the lower right-hand screen, there'll be a leave breakout room button that you can click, and that'll just dump you back into the main room.
Okay.
Yeah, so continue talking or not, as the case may be.
Okay.
let's see, for Klamath Falls, I think too, that survey might be something that would also be useful. That was a question that came up.
Yeah, Marge, that is the survey that he's talking about is the same one that we're using in STEM Beyond School, are very similar. But I think that they're based on the same one, and ours is targeted at a little bit different. I don't know. It's always confusing. I don't know who it's appropriate to give credit to at certain points in time because it's such a collaboration. But I think it comes from different ones that were created for different reasons. And I know that Portland Metro has a lot of, oh, there's Jerry Ann right there. They have a lot of pretty great resources as far as using those for measuring. We like to measure also in our teachers and see that, you know, how do teachers feel like they're being more effective, and do they notice a difference in their students? And those are all things that, from my understanding, are open to collaboration.
Yeah, we have a strategy for the kids take on that reflects the teachers as well, so that we kind of get feedback on if we're standing up in front of the classroom too long, if we're, you know, just lecturing or more hands-on. So it's really helpful to go through that and evaluate yourself as well. So any other ideas about STEM identity that you would like to bring up? I don't know if Jerry Ann is talking to us or someone else.
Sorry. I was muted. Thank you. Thank you. No, I was just saying, so the two suggested questions were around what were some of the ideas that resonated with you as you heard our presenters and myself speak, and then what resources do you currently have that you view actually might be. But there's also other questions that you're more than welcome to pursue. Those were just two suggested ones.
Okay. We've had some conversation about, you know, STEM identity and getting a storyline in a school and then surveying. So finding partnerships. Go ahead.
Cool.
Libby, did you want to say something?
Well, one of the parts of my job is recruiting students to apply to our summer internship program. And the students that usually gravitate to our program already really have that passion for science and engineering. But sometimes it is a big jump to get them to think about committing a whole summer to an internship and, you know, realizing that it could be a real change in their career path and the way they see themselves as college students and professionals, when, like, at the same time they're being presented with, you know, they could make more money at Subway over the summer or, you know, at the ice cream shop versus, you know, living on $1,000 for the summer, but really having this experience that seems to really resonate with what the speakers talked about, being hands-on and exploring.
Thanks you, Libby. Is anything else? Anything you'd like to chat about?
I like Marge's point about I just messed up my scroll. That the importance of calling students the occupation name that they're doing, and how there's the example of being a runner. And I agree that that also was an interesting way to think about it, how you don't, the title, how much it defines how you feel about yourself and how your relationship with the activities that you're doing.
Right. Our school was piloting, my classroom was piloting some new science adoptions this year. And when waiting for the materials to come in, I did a little thing called Mystery Science. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a free thing. It's great. So we did one on variation of traits with apples and things like that. And as we were going through it, I was telling the students, I said, do you realize, I said, this is a field of study. People, there's a great school called Oregon State University, and they have a lot of agricultural science and different things fields you could go into. If you're interested in things like this, that might be something later on you could think, oh, I could go to Oregon State University and study more about this. I mean, I think it's really important to just say, here's the possibilities for you. Here's a chance, and it's right in our own state. You could drive there and drive home on the weekends. So I think a lot of our teachers try to do that to a certain degree as well, and just getting kids to understand, yeah, this is something I could do. I like to eat food, and I want to change it. So might be a good career for me. But anyway, it'll be fun.
Cool. Well, I'm going to go check in on the other group. When you feel like you're done with your conversation, there's in the lower right-hand corner a leave breakout room button that you can just join the main group again when you're ready. And I'll give you a 1-minute warning when I'm going to pull the group together. So
okay.
Continue talking as you so desire, and see you in a bit. Hello.
Is everyone else still chatting away?
Others are still in the group. I'm going to go check on the other group. I think they're probably getting to a point where they're going to reconvene. So, so just be patient. Have a conversation with those that are in the main room right now, because there's a handful of folks in the main room.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, I think I'm just going to I've just given them a 1-minute warning. So we'll reconvene in 52 seconds.
Jennifer, are you at the office?
I am, yes.
Are you guys down in the basement now?
No, we have a spot upstairs in the upper level, but our storage is down in the basement. So it's a nice walk. We get to walk down a couple of flights of stairs. It's great.
Is Andrea there?
Yes, I believe she is.
All right.
Yeah. We had a meeting earlier today.
Fun. And you guys had your retreat this weekend?
Yes.
Did you get to go?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Was it snowy on the ground?
Oh my gosh, there was so much snow.
Awesome.
There was a path. I didn't even see the driveway. So there was like a huge path all the way to the main road, essentially, because there was no way to shovel it all out. So.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Cool.
This is Libby on the line, also good friends with Megan Wentworth. I hope you'll say hi to Andrea, too.
Oh, Libby Van Fleet?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Libby.
Nice to see you.
Thanks for holding my baby this summer.
Oh, I can't wait to do it again.
She's so big. She's so great now. I love her.
Oh, great now, huh?
Yeah, no, 10 weeks old, that was not so fun. But 8 months, she's like a peach.
Yeah, it's my favorite age.
Yeah, she's great. Libby, in what capacity are you here?
I am the program coordinator for Saturday Academy's ACE program. It's a science and engineering internship program for high school kids in the summer.
Very cool.
Great.
Yeah.
I did not know that. How neat.
Now you do.
Now we can talk business too, and not just campfire.
Well, thank you, everyone. So in your small groups, you discuss some questions. Perhaps it was the ones around what resonated with you and what resources and assets can you currently leverage to foster STEM identity. Perhaps it was others. What I'd like to suggest is, as a large group, to continue our conversations. What were your key insights and takeaways? What do you hope to do differently? What questions do you have to throw out to the group? So feel free to use the chat if you want to do that, but also feel free to unmute yourself, introduce who you are and what your role is, and share or ask a question.
Just a quick note, this is Kristen, not to participate. I'm not answering your question, Jerry, and don't you love that I'm not? If you're curious about the view that you see on your screen, if you go into the upper right-hand corner, you can choose the gallery view, and then you can see all the faces at one time. So in case you've been scrolling down the side, that's fine too, but the gallery view button in the corner will let you see everybody at once.
Thank you. So what were some things that really stood out to folks in terms of, oh, that's something our program does now, or, oh, that's something we could easily begin doing? We have a shy group. Oh, you have to unmute yourself though, Caitlin. Let's see.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Now.
There we go.
Well, I was just going to say, I thought a common thing that almost everyone said and that I think would be very easy to implement would be to have that language, that common language across your staff of referring to your students as, scientists, engineers, hydrologists. I love even really the very discipline-specific names. And that just seems like something so easy that would be really like a cultural shift. If you could really get all of your staff to engage in that, like what could that do for a whole school or a whole staff culture if you're at an out of school partner type site. So that was pretty cool that everyone thought it was great, and multiple of the TOSAs mentioned that. Yeah.
And for me, it's nice to know that something so simple as that can also be so powerful, right?
Yeah.
That it doesn't take this complex, complicated set of whatevers. It can be something as simple as naming something and making it explicit.
Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, I think making sure that they actually are engaging in the practices of those jobs. And so you're not just, like telling them about this science and then calling them scientists, but, really like the hands-on and minds-on nature of the activities that they were engaged in, of course, is like really important too.
It seems like just trying to attend to the language that you use and being intentional about it would improve incorporating terms like that and helping to name, helping to have kids see themselves in that way. I would wonder if kind of each of us and the educators that we connect with, it might also, attending to language might also help us realize where we are actually undermining our students without wanting to, but using some of the terms or using some of the, boys carry heavy things or girls have certain roles or, just some of those components too that we may not initially think about or our educators may not initially think about or so I wonder if just attending to it around those simple terms might also have a benefit in other ways as well.
I wonder if, we didn't talk as much about the STEM identity and motivational resilience survey that the PMSP has, but, with all the different components that Jerry Ann pointed out in the beginning of STEM identity, I wonder if it might be useful for everybody who's kind of planning their school and program work to take, like, if you do the survey, take a real look at maybe 1 or 2 or 3 of those components and then think about how would I help my staff grow in these specific areas, and what strategies are we going to use intentionally to address, like motivational resilience, for example, or one of the others, autonomy. I think that could be pretty powerful if I was thinking about like how I'm going to direct the staff development in my school. And I know that, the STEM schools have gone through some of that process, but then kind of following up year to year and then monitoring that growth if you are using the survey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is intriguing. This idea of autonomy and ownership is one that intrigues me greatly. I know personally, when I have that opportunity for choice, I'm much more likely to be engaged in doing it in whatever. And I think as an adult, the supervisors that were the most helpful to me recognize that early on and gave me a lot of choice and a lot of ownership around the work that I was doing. And I think it plays out well with kids as well. And so to ask yourself, when you're setting up these experiences for kids, what about this experience can I change that provides an opportunity for more ownership, for more choice, that empowers the kid to be in a more controlling role, which then means that as the teacher, I need to step back from that controlling role and allow that to play out. And that can be challenging and scary for a teacher to do, for an educator to do. And it can also create a really dynamic and engaging learning environment by giving the opportunity for the kid to step to the plate and have more control, more autonomy, more choice, more ownership in their learning.
We had a question go into the chat. What does everyone think can be done to increase resiliency, especially in an outdoor setting? And wondering whether autonomy might also help resilience.
I think one of the things that has been interesting for us in taking a look at the results from the tool that Portland Metro STEM Partnership developed was that we, around resiliency, noticed, we were surprised to see that we didn't see as much growth in that, and that helps us. I mean, when you're looking at data, you're able to see your strengths and maybe where some holes are. And so that was a really eye-opening thing to see, that we weren't growing in every area. And so that's a really good question. How do we increase resiliency? And I think that it has, the duration of the outdoor school program is something that plays a factor in that. And so I too struggle with the question, how do we support students in having those opportunities to resist, or not resist, but work through tough problems?
One of the things that we've tried and had success with in the science enrichment programs that we do within schools is I always have trained volunteers that would go in with me, and we go in with the concept that every child is going to find some level of success in the science activities that we're doing. So if we had a child that was struggling, we'd often have, because we had extra adults, we could have an adult work with them at their level and even approach the problem in a different way. So, for example, the other day we were in a school and doing designing and racing model solar cars, and the kids had to design their car to scale on graph paper before they could build it and actually race it to test it. So we had one student that was really struggling with that, and so we just changed the problem around and said, if you want to build it first and then draw what you build, that's okay too. You can approach it whichever way you want to approach it, and then just help guide the students without giving them answers to questions, but giving them some guiding and some facilitation, so they didn't become frustrated and just give up. And then they have that sense of, you know, I've succeeded in doing this. I've actually done it. And, you know, I stuck with it and I just tried another approach and it worked. Now, next time I run into a problem, we're hoping anyways that the child thinks, well, you know, I've run into problems before that didn't work out the first time. Maybe, you know, that they'll think back on that example and use that. I don't know if that would work in that particular child, but from past programs that we've done over years in the schools, it seems that we've had quite a bit of success with just trying to use different approaches and you can do that with additional adults in the classroom that could, you know, help the kid think through or approach it from another angle rather than become so frustrated that they just didn't even want to do it.
Or even to really train them to help each other, you know, when you do have only one adult, you know, maximizing those collaboration strategies, not just within groups, but telling different groups to support each other if they're, like, say, designing something or solving a problem. And one thing actually I see a lot in my trainings around, like, if I'm working with teachers and we're talking about, like, engineering design, it's pretty common out there still where you'll have, like, a very competitive environment, especially around engineering. It tends to happen. And one thing that the research actually pretty clearly shows is that students of color or underserved students tend to not be resilient when they're in the presence of, you know, dominant, you know, like white students, basically male white students, when it comes to those competitive challenges. So if they know, like, why should I even try? Why should I work through this first hurdle if I know I'm not going to win anyway? And the research shows that white students actually gain in those scenarios versus students of color, students of poverty, underserved students, either flatline or in fact, some, like, in some cases have gone down in their outcomes because of that. So that's kind of something that I really thought about when I even go online and you read engineering lessons and it says, you know, compete for the tallest tower or this or that, you know, versus maybe I heard Lou and we were talking in our breakout group and she said how they wanted to design something to withstand an earthquake. So versus, like, comparing to each other, it was kind of like they had to meet a certain criteria. And so it's still a challenge and they have criteria to meet, but like maybe the groups can help each other to figure out all the different ways and strategies they could use to withstand the earthquake or whatever the measure is. And that's something that teachers usually have to kind of talk through to figure out, okay, how would I adapt this, like, traditionally competitive project into something that's more collaborative? As an example. Which I think lots of you guys are already doing, by the way.
I do like that idea of, because when I taught, some of what I saw in some of my colleagues' classrooms was, I think it is challenging, number one, to create a challenging learning environment that's at the appropriate level of challenge. You want it challenging but achievable, and there's a fine line between challenging and achievable and challenging and a disaster. And so if we can structure it in such a way where there are options for the kids, instead of coming in and being, like, super prescriptive and there's only one way to solve this challenge, by creating those situations where, and encouraging the idea of, well, there's more than one way to solve it. And so I appreciate Janet's description of, well, let's just flip the way we usually do it. It may work better for you to go ahead and start putting something together and see what works, rather than what worked for me and my learning style as the teacher. So that flexibility from both the teacher perspective, but also creating that flexible learning for the student, I think is one way to think through, how can I create a challenging situation that's still achievable?
Mm-hmm. And to follow up, I think, on that is to celebrate when things are a failure, that it's actually a learning opportunity there, that you can you can learn from and build upon for the future.
And to give them the chance to get to keep trying, to get to iterate, to make it better, to make it. Some of the language I've heard before around what is that sweet spot for the challenge is the optimal challenge, far enough that it's like a real victory. Too easy, shallow, too hard, disaster. So that idea of what's the optimal challenge is really intriguing.
And I think going off of the making mistakes, I know in my classroom, the students, if you ask them my opinion of mistakes, and they're like, you love it when we make mistakes, because we learn that the neurons grow in our brain. So every time we make a mistake, a neuron grows. And so it builds that community the first month of school, knowing that if I come up to share something and I'm wrong, it's not going to be the end of the world, because I know that my teacher is going to be like really excited, because I tell them, if you thought about it this way, I can guarantee you at least one other person thought about it the same way. And so we are going to help all of you. And so I think, I have a student that's new to my classroom, terrified of making a mistake, wants to be perfect all the time. Everything has to be right, won't risk anything. So it's such a contrast to the rest of my students that I see are kind of like, oh, well, I'll give it a try, and do it. And he's like, nope, I can't do it. I'm not, I'm done, and so it's very much, very two separate things happening. So, I agree. Anytime you can celebrate a mistake, unless of course it's like a disaster, it gets them it kind of takes off a lot of these self-induced fears about, I want to be wrong in front of my peers, but if Miss Engel makes a joke about it, then it's gonna be all right. So, if the kids seem to like it, and they goes along with that growth mindset, but they do really well with that. Anyway, that's mine.
I worked with a teacher who, in the back of her room, had this very elaborate experiment going on, and it was one that she deliberately designed to be unsolvable. But she didn't tell that to anybody. And it was, in fact, halfway through the school year that I finally cornered her to ask what she was doing. And because I didn't think it was solvable, but she definitely had me questioning. And she said that was the whole idea. It's like every time the student asked me about it, it's like, I haven't figured it out. I don't know. I can't get it to work. I'm not sure what's going on. I don't know. What do you think? But it opened that door for that conversation of, I don't know everything. I make mistakes. I can't get it right either. And you're helping me figure this out is great. And so it kind of really gave her the window, the opportunity to model that idea and to put her students at ease around, I don't expect you to know everything. I don't expect you to get it right. I expect you to struggle. I can't figure out that thing either. But it was an interesting way of approaching it. She never did it explicitly. She did it through that kind of modeling. So other thoughts? So I don't know if my screen is still being shared or not. Let's see if I can share my screen again. There we go. So I have to say it was really fun. I found this quiz called the STEM Superhero Identity, not to be confused with our Student Affective Survey. And I'll send out a link to a folder that has the PowerPoint and whatnot. But if you are interested in learning more about the Student Affective Survey, I'm happy to send you information, share more about that survey. I appreciate our presenters sharing their use of the survey and how it's been helpful in the work that they've been doing. And at the same time, you can take the quiz on your STEM superhero identity and see what superhero you are most like. With that, if there are no further questions, we do greatly appreciate our presenters sharing their good work. Appreciate your opportunity to join us in this webinar and offer your contributions as well. And we welcome to support you and work with you in helping to foster STEM identity in youth. So thank you very much. And look forward to continuing the conversation in some form. And with that, I'm going to end the webinar and stop the recording.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for